Imagine standing right on the shores of the Red Sea, or, the Yam Suf, as it's called in the original Hebrew.
Oh,
You can literally feel the ground shaking because the thunder of this entire enemy empire's chariot force is just bearing down right behind you.
oh yeah. Terrifying.
Exactly. And in front of you is a completely impassable, raging ocean. I mean, there's nowhere to go.
Oh, where?
And then, defying all logic and physics, the sea simply parts in two. You just walk through on dry land. It really makes you ask, what kind of God writes a story exactly like that?
It's an incredible image.
It really is. So welcome to the deep dive. Today we're answering that exact question. We've got these really intense, primary source heavy notes from a conservative evangelical Old Testament survey course.
Yeah, these notes are incredibly robust.
Very. And, we aren't here to preach or take sides in modern religious debates. We are just going to dissect this ancient text like a literary masterpiece to see how this ragtag group of slaves underwent basically the ultimate corporate rebranding.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. Our mission today is to look at the book of Exodus not just as some ancient history of escape, but as this highly structured journey from absolute bondage to profound belonging. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, and to really understand those massive earth-shattering miracles, we first have to understand the foundational setting.
The context.
Exactly. These sources are geared toward theology students, MDiv students, church leaders. So they spend a lot of time on the sits in Levin.
The setting in life.
Right,
Yeah.
the historical setting in life. And it actually starts with realizing that the word Exodus wasn't even the original title.
Oh, really? Wait, that comes from the Greek translation, right? Meaning like the way out or departure.
Yeah, which, it's a bit of a spoiler alert, but it actually misses the original textual connection entirely.
How so?
Well, the original Hebrew title in the BHS text is Allah Shemot, or just Shemo, which translates simply to, and these are the names.
And these are the names. That feels so much more grounded.
Right. By starting with that exact phrase,
Mm-hmm.
the text is deliberately tethering itself to the book of Genesis. You see, Genesis ends as a family history. It's 70 people, the descendants of Jacob, going down into Egypt just to survive a local famine.
Right.
But Exodus picks up that exact thread and completely transforms the narrative scale. We watch this extended family of 70 just explode into a newly formed nation of roughly 3 million people over 4 centuries.
Wow. And, managing a demographic explosion like that and documenting it requires a very specific kind of author.
Yes, it really does.
The survey course notes vigorously defend a traditional, essential Mosaic authorship. They argue that you can't just have, some later scribe making this up from scratch during the exile.
The internal evidence points to someone with a highly unusual resume. Moses is uniquely positioned in ancient history for this.
Because he was an insider.
Exactly. You need someone who has elite literacy and an insider's eyewitness knowledge of Egyptian court life. There's specific customs, the building projects at cities like Pithom and Ramesses.
But you also need someone with decades of gritty desert survival skills.
Yes. Moses was raised in Pharaoh's household, absorbing the empire's administration, and then he spent 40 years as a shepherd in the Midianite wilderness.
So he knows the geopolitical landscape, and he literally knows where the water is in the desert.
Precisely.
Wait, let's pause on the dating debate the sources bring up here.
Sure.
They contrast the 15th century early date of around 1446 BC with the 13th century late date of 1290 BC. Frankly, to you, the listener, an argument over 150 years in ancient history probably feels like pure academic trivia.
It can definitely seem that way.
Why are these scholars so fixated on getting that specific date right?
Well, this raises an important question, and for the scholars writing these notes, it is definitely not just trivia. They argue strongly for the early date of 1446 BC.
Based on what?
Primarily on a literal reading of 1 Kings 6.1, which calculates the Exodus as happening exactly 480 years before Solomon began building his temple.
Okay, so it's a scriptural math equation.
Right. But the reason this matters so deeply to their theology is because it forcefully grounds these events in actual, verifiable human history during the Late Bronze Age.
So they're fighting against the idea that this is just some inspirational fairy tale that happened once upon a time.
Exactly. Think about the geopolitical landscape at that exact time. If we lock in 1446 BC, we're looking at the sudden, almost inexplicable collapse of Egyptian imperial influence in Canaan shortly after.
Oh, wow. So the history lines up.
Yeah, if the Exodus happens then, the subsequent history of the region makes sense. It means the theology of a rescuing God is rooted in real historical disruption. Yahweh isn't just a concept, he is an actor on the stage of human history.
He directly confronts the greatest superpower of the ancient world,
Exactly.
which perfectly sets up how this text operates on a literary level. Knowing this happened in the shadow of the Egyptian empire, you can see how the author uses brilliant literary strategies to completely humiliate that empire's worldview.
Oh, the polemics are amazing.
Yeah, the notes classify the genre here as Torah, meaning instruction, structured as a covenant-oriented historical narrative. And they point out how Exodus deliberately subverts ancient Near Eastern texts.
Right, if you read ancient Near Eastern victory inscriptions from that era, like the monuments pharaohs carved into stone,
Yeah.
they are pure, unadulterated propaganda.
Just total ego trips.
Total ego trips.
Mm.
They're entirely focused on glorifying human kings. The pharaoh is literally considered a god on earth, and his victories are presented as absolute and flawless.
But Exodus flips that script entirely.
Completely. The human king pharaoh is rendered totally impotent, reactionary, and stubborn. The true hero of the story is Yahweh.
Acting purely out of gracious initiative on behalf of people who have nothing to offer him.
Yes.
And nowhere is that humiliation clearer than in the 10 plagues in chapters 7 through 12. The sources describe this as a literal fight between deities. I've always viewed the plagues as a systematic, targeted corporate takeover.
A corporate takeover. Explain how you see that playing out.
Well, Yahweh isn't just throwing random natural disasters at Egypt to scare them into submission. He is systematically dismantling the Egyptian board of directors.
Ah, I see what you mean.
Take Hapi, the god of the Nile. The Nile wasn't just a river, it was the entire Egyptian economy and agricultural lifeblood. By turning the Nile to blood, Yahweh essentially bankrupts their primary subsidiary.
Right.
Then you have Ra, the supreme sun god, basically the CEO of their pantheon.
Yeah, the top god.
So plunging the land into 3 days of absolute paralyzing darkness, that's a total blackout of their chief executive. It's a hostile takeover, proving absolute sovereignty over every department of creation that the Egyptians thought their specific gods controlled.
The corporate takeover analogy works incredibly well here because it highlights the systematic nature of the text. Not at all. The author structures this hostile takeover with incredible mathematical precision. The sources highlight that the plagues are actually structured as a triadic chiasm.
Okay, let's break that term down for the listener. A triad is a group of 3, obviously, but what exactly is a chiasm doing here?
Right, so a chiasm is an ancient literary device that acts sort of like a mirror.
Okay.
If you read the text, the first half of a concept mirrors the second half, naturally drawing your attention right to the center, or in this case, building a very specific rhythm. The plagues are grouped into 3 sets of 3.
So 3, 3, and 3.
Exactly. Plagues 1, 4, and 7 all start with a warning to Pharaoh in the morning. Plagues 2, 5, and 8 come with a warning inside the palace.
Oh, fascinating.
And then plagues 3, 6, and 9 strike without any warning at all.
It's like tightening a vice grip. The rhetorical pressure just keeps building and building in these cycles.
And it builds until the pattern violently breaks with the devastating climax of the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn.
Right.
This highly structured poetry of judgment serves a larger macro structure in the book, shaping its emotional and logical arc.
The 2 halves of the book.
Yeah, it moves from deliverance from Egypt in chapters 1 through 18, leading directly into the covenant and tabernacle at Sinai in chapters 19 through 40.
Because freedom leaves a vacuum. Yahweh just completely humiliated the gods of their oppressors and physically uncreated Egypt.
Right.
The Israelites are standing in the desert, completely free. But who are they now? Who is in charge?
It's the huge question.
And the literary structure doesn't just look around at the defeated Egyptian empire to answer that. It looks backward to Genesis. And from the perspective of these evangelical sources, it looks forward to the New Testament.
The backward glance is anchored by very specific Hebrew words acting as connective tissue.
Like what?
The notes focus heavily on the word pakad, which means to visit or to attend to.
Okay.
After 400 years of brutal slavery, brick-making, and what must have felt like absolute divine silence, God says he has remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He pakad, he attends to them.
Wow. So what was just a promise whispered to wandering patriarchs centuries ago is now becoming a historical reality.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we see that reality burst forth in chapter 3 with the famous theophany at the burning bush, the Sinai.
Right, the Sinai.
Moses is out there in the dirt and the scrub brush, and God reveals his ultimate covenant name, Ahia Asher Ahia, I am WHOIM.
It's such a mysterious phrase.
It really is. It expands on the names of God from Genesis, telling Israel that the self-existent, uncreated God isn't just a historical footnote.
Right, he's not just the God of the past.
Exactly. He is acting in their immediate present. And the way he acts through those plagues is profoundly connected to the Genesis creation account. The scholars here actually describe the plagues as an act of uncreation.
I want to dig into that because the Egyptians were obsessed with order, right? They called it marat.
Yes, Ma'at. They believed their gods maintain the delicate balance of the cosmos. Think about the order of Genesis 1.
Okay, light waters.
Right. God brings light out of darkness, separates the waters, brings forth dry land, and creates animal and human life. The plagues run that exact sequence in reverse.
Yeah, they plunge Egypt back into primordial darkness and chaos. The waters become undrinkable, the land is overrun by swarms and disease, and finally there is the anti-creation of death.
So God uses uncreation to judge the oppressors, dismantling their false sense of Ma'at before initiating a recreation of Israel through the waters of the Red Sea.
Beautifully said.
And from the perspective of the survey course, all of this backward-looking history is actually pointing on a very specific forward trajectory.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the conservative evangelical sources emphasize deep Christological trajectories here.
Right.
They don't just read Exodus as an isolated historical event. They look at it as a physical, historical prototype of divine grace that finds its ultimate spiritual fulfillment in Jesus Christ.
And they lean heavily on the Passover in chapter 12 for this.
They really do.
During the final plague, the blood of an unblemished lamb is painted on the doorposts of the Israelite homes to avert the judgment of death.
And the sources trace this directly to the New Testament, where the Apostle Paul explicitly calls Christ our Passover Lamb in 1 Corinthians 5:7.
Yeah.
It introduces the profound theological concept of substitutionary atonement.
Let's make sure we define that clearly for you, the listener. Substitutionary atonement is essentially the idea that a massive debt is owed, a judgment is coming, and someone else steps in to absorb that cost.
Right. In the Exodus narrative, the judgment on the oppressive empire is absolute. But the Israelites aren't inherently more righteous than the Egyptians.
No, they are just as broken.
The only difference is that a substitute has been offered. The judgment passes over their homes because the lamb took the penalty in their place. This becomes the central nervous system of how these scholars understand the entire biblical canon.
They also point out a really fascinating transition of leadership that acts as a metaphor. Moses represents the law, right? He can lead the people out of bondage and guide them through the wilderness, but he isn't allowed to actually bring them into the promised land. It's Joshua who takes over and brings the people into their inheritance.
And the name Joshua in Hebrew is Yeshua, which is the exact same name as Jesus.
Wow.
The scholars view that as a highly intentional typological connection. The law can guide you, it can show you the boundaries of how to live, but the law cannot save you. Only the promised seed, the savior figure, can actually bring you home.
So what does this all mean for the Israelites standing on the far shore of the Red Sea? Because the climax of a corporate takeover isn't just firing the old board of directors.
No, you have to establish a new company culture.
Exactly. The destination wasn't just getting out of Egypt, it was getting to Sinai.
Yes, the establishment of the Sinai covenant is the theological anchor of the book.
Yeah.
And what is vital to understand here, and what the sources stress heavily, is the sequence of events. Grace precedes the law.
That sequence completely changes the course of human religious history. God doesn't show up in the brickyards of Egypt and hand them the Ten Commandments saying, if you can keep these rules basically for a month, then I will consider rescuing you.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Think about how terrifying the ancient world was. In almost every other ancient Near Eastern religion, humans were seen as an afterthought.
Created just to do the grunt work for capricious, irritable gods.
Exactly, yet it constantly appeased them with perfect behavior and sacrifices just to keep them from destroying your crops. But in Exodus 20, God explicitly states, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, before he issues a single commandment.
The rescue happens while they're still deeply flawed.
The law was not given to establish a relationship with God. It was given to a people who were already redeemed purely out of grace.
Right.
The law, the new employee handbook, to use your analogy, was given to maintain that relationship and show them how to live as a free, holy society.
And more specifically, to show them how to survive with the CEO moving his office right into their neighborhood, which is what chapters 25 through 40 are all about, the construction of the tabernacle. Honestly, reading ancient architectural blueprints for curtains and bronze basins can be incredibly dry.
Oh, it really can.
But the notes reframe it beautifully. The tabernacle is designed as a portable Eden.
The sensory imagery is stunning when you actually visualize it. Imagine being out in the barren, dusty desert,
Yeah.
and in the center of your camp is this structure woven with blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. You have a massive golden lampstand deliberately structured with branches, calyxes, and almond blossoms, visually representing the tree of life.
Wow.
You smell the constant burning of specialized incense. You see heavy veils with images of cherubim woven directly into the fabric, just as living cherubim guarded the entrance to the Garden of Eden after humanity was exiled.
It's God saying, we lost the garden, but I am bringing the garden to you. I am putting a slice of Eden right here in the dirt with you.
And that relies on two massive Hebrew concepts that the survey course emphasizes: Shekin and Kabod.
Okay, unpack those.
Shekin means to dwell or to tabernacle. It's an active, ongoing presence. Kabod means glory, that it carries the literal connotation of weight or heaviness, the undeniable physical weight of God's presence.
So the goal wasn't just geographical freedom.
No, the entire goal of the Exodus was Shirkin, for God to intimately dwell amidst his people. The book literally ends with the Kabod, the heavy glory of Yahweh, descending like a cloud and filling this portable Eden so intensely that even Moses can't go inside.
So for you, the MDiv students, pastors, and church leaders reading these notes today, how do the sources practically apply all of this? How do you take a 3,400-year-old story about a portable tent and use it to equip someone for life right now?
Well, the pastoral application, what the notes call the equip and inspire takeaways, focuses heavily on the wilderness experience. First, it teaches leaders to proclaim a God who actively hears the cries of the oppressed.
Right.
The Exodus narrative gives modern believers the paradigm and the language to confront modern pharaohs.
The systems of endless production, idolatry, injustice, and despair that still enslave people today.
Precisely. It demands that leaders don't just preach a spiritualized escape, but recognize God's deep concern for physical and systemic suffering.
That's powerful.
And secondly, it teaches profound trust in the wilderness. Right after the Red Sea, the adrenaline wears off, they are stuck in the desert, they get hungry, and they immediately complain.
They actually say they'd rather go back to being slaves because, at least in Egypt, they had pots of meat.
The psychology of comfort versus freedom is just amazing there. But God doesn't strike them down for complaining. He provides manna miraculous bread from heaven.
But there's a catch.
There is. He only gives them exactly enough for one day at a time. If they try to hoard it, it rots. The pastoral application here is teaching people how to trust God's daily provision when they feel like they are in a dry, barren season of life.
You don't get a 5-year plan.
No, you don't get a month's worth of answers all at once. You get just enough grace for today, and you have to wake up tomorrow and trust him again.
It's an incredible sprawling arc. We started with a small, groaning family, trapped in the brickyards of a brutal empire. And through a systematic, cosmic dismantling of that empire's economy and theology.
Through triadic plagues and split oceans.
Yeah, they are transformed into a massive, covenanted nation. A nation that literally camps around a portable Eden, worshiping a God who chose to pitch his tent right in the middle of their mess.
It is the defining story of redemption that sets the theological template for the rest of the biblical text.
But the sources also make sure not to skip over the text's darker, more uncomfortable realities. And think about what this means for you if you were standing at the bottom of that mountain, right in the middle of this beautiful covenant process. While Moses is up on Sinai receiving the law, the people at the bottom get anxious. They melt down their jewelry and build a golden calf.
The great apostasy, happening literally in the shadow of the mountain where God's presence is resting.
It's a haunting psychological reality. If an entire nation of people could literally walk through an ocean that had been split in half by the breath of God.
If they could wake up and personally eat miraculous bread that fell from the sky every single morning.
Right, yet still immediately turn around and build a golden idol the second they felt a little impatient or afraid. What does that actually say about human nature? Does true, lasting transformation require something fundamentally more than just witnessing incredible miracles?
You can take the people out of Egypt overnight. But taking Egypt out of the people, that is a much harder, much longer exodus.
Next time you imagine standing on the dry floor of the Red Sea with the water walled up on your left and your right, ask yourself, once you reach the other side, what idols are you still carrying in your pockets? Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. Keep questioning, keep unpacking, and keep exploring.